Welcome to 5 Good Minutes. You're listening to today's inspirational message on the fruit of the Spirit with Brady Randall.
Today we're on day 4 looking at the fruit of the Spirit of kindness. And over this week we've looked at the fruit, the root, and the goal of kindness. And today we're going to look at the difficulty of bearing the fruit of kindness. I'm not much of an agriculturalist, but I know that growing fruit can be difficult. Fruit needs a certain amount of water. It needs to be have the weeds kept at bay. It needs certain amounts of sun and protection from the wind. So it's not easy. And in the same way, growing and reaping the fruit of kindness can be difficult. And I don't need to tell you that. You know how difficult it can be to show kindness, particularly to people who don't deserve it. People are people when people are messy. The Apostle Paul wrote in Ephesians chapter 4 and 30 and 31, he said this, "Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, along with every form of malice." And in verse 32, he says this, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you." Now, what this text says is that it's possible to grieve the very same Holy Spirit who is producing the fruit, which is Christ-like character in those that belong to Him. So therefore, we're instructed to get rid of the bitterness, rage, and anger, and to be kind and compassionate with one another. And notice how? By forgiving each other, just as Christ has forgiven us. Now, it is easier to hold a grudge against people. It's easier to talk behind their back, to get irritated with people, than to genuinely exude and offer kindness. But we're told directly how to do just that, and that is by forgiving each other, just as Christ has forgiven us. Now, I consider myself a big proponent of justice. I want to see bad guys get caught. I want to see people pay their dues. I don't want to be on the other side of injustice. And I get really fired up if I or someone that I know is being taken advantage of. I want to get even with someone, especially if they've wronged me. And usually when I start to go in this direction, my heart starts racing, I start to get anxious, and in those moments, I need to be reminded of this important fact. Jesus has forgiven me. Now, it's extremely humbling when I begin to realize just how much I have been forgiven myself. All the awful things that I've said, all that I've thought, all the skeletons in my closet, all the things I should have done and didn't. When I was at my very worst and an enemy of God Himself, He could have held me to account right on the spot, and He would have been absolutely right to do so. But instead, He forgave me. He wiped out the penalty of my sin, and it's as if I owed $1 trillion and He paid my account in full. Now, if that's how much I owed God, and it's far more than that, how ridiculous would it be if I realized that I've been forgiven $1 trillion and yet I caused such an uproar if someone owes me $1? You see, showing kindness to an enemy, someone who is difficult to love or has wronged you or I, it is really abnormal. I mean, who does that? When this happens, people take notice. That seems totally backwards in today's world. Proverbs 25, 21, and 22, it says, "If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. Because in doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you." Kindness is costly, and it can sting. A good doctor or oncologist may have to cut deeply to get at the root of cancer, but it is for the patient's good. And only when we realize the costly price that Jesus paid for us, His enemies, will enable and empower us to show genuine kindness to those who don't deserve it, because in reality, none of us do. And so who in your life right now is it mostly a struggle for you to be kind to in this season? I want you to think of that person or people, and would you join me in prayer that God would supernaturally enable you and I to live out and show this kind of kindness that God has shown to us when we were enemies of God.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day. day.